Hello YouTubers, welcome back. I'm Bill Griffith and today I wanted to walk through how I use the Scrum Agile framework with Trello for leading a technical sales team in Agile sales execution. There's a lot of content out there on Agile and sales, but what I couldn't find a lot of content on was the details of the mechanics of how you actually do it. And so this video is a deep dive into how to apply Agile and more specifically Scrum in your sales execution. Additionally, I'll demonstrate the process as I implement it using Trello Kanban boards. So if this sounds interesting to you, stick around. Okay, so why Scrum for Agile sales execution? So my top 4 reasons are number 1, focus. I really like Agile because it allows us to focus what we're going to do. We break down big tasks into smaller chunks, get that work in front of our audience, our clients, our stakeholders, and get feedback. And that allows us to get better results. So I really like that about Agile in general, and Scrum does a really good job about prescribing how to go about doing that. The second thing I really like about Agile methods is the triage, the prioritization of what's most important. More than likely, we have more on our plate than we can actually do. So if I've got 10 things on my plate, what are the 3 that are most important? And let me focus on those 3, get those 3 done before I start the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th. So I really like that. I think that helps to execute more successfully. The third reason, transparency. So what are we doing? Let's document, or not really document, but let's capture our plan. What are we trying to do? Write it down, just a list of to-dos, a list of bullets of what your plan is, what you plan to do this week. Make it available to the people, your sponsors, your stakeholders, your management. Get feedback from them. I heard the quote once that feedback is a gift, and that really rang true with me. You can't improve if you already have all the answers and if you're always right. So get feedback from others. It results in better quality, better results. And finally, Scrum is based off of the sport rugby, and it's a team sport. And I really like that because a lot of times sellers, we think that we're sort of independent. I got my deals and I'm out doing my own thing. But the reality is we work in a collection of teams. We have people that help us with pricing and contracts, and we have people that help us with the technical details of the architectures or the configurations or demos. And complex deals probably have 10 different people that are involved in the work. And so sort of collaborating and capturing your plan and getting feedback from your team, from people that are working on the deals with you, can be very effective in getting better results. Okay, so I know this is a busy chart, but this is sort of an architectural flyover of the process, and then I'll walk through the mechanics with Trello. But at a high level, what we do is work comes in. This is my sort of bullet 1 here. Work comes in from a potential client, a prospect. They have a need. Hey, I heard about your quantum computer. Can you tell me about it? Or I saw your video or your commercial during the Super Bowl on Watson fantasy football. How does that work? Can you walk me through that? So that's a need. That's a prospect, not yet qualified. Obviously, this type of stuff you'd also put in a CRM. But Trello allows me to sort of just hone in on what the to-dos are for this week. And then I link into my CRM from Trello. Additionally, we have business development executives that are often developing clients and working on demand generation ideas, campaigns, roadshows, enablement, things like that. And so they may generate asks for us. And then, of course, we, especially in the cloud world today, where the world is all about consumption, it's no longer just selling a big transaction. It's keeping people happy, making sure that they're getting value from what you sold them and what they're using of your products and services. So obviously, when customers have problems with your products, then being able to reach out and get support and making sure that everybody's all hands on deck, getting that resolved quickly and keeping that experience positive is obviously a big driver. And a driver for sales too. There's no pre-sales, post-sales anymore. Sales is a full life cycle sport. So in Scrum, we track all of these requests in what's called a product backlog, and that's simply just a list of work to be done. Now the challenge is work goes through sort of an evolution of maturity. I call it maturity level 1, 2, 3, 4, and as we sort of progress that work, we add clarity and detail to the ask, the request, that helps us to size the work, estimate the work, plan the work, and then effectively do it. So that's what this does here. And so from the left to right, the work sort of progresses as more details are added to the work. And in Trello, you use the concept of a card. I think that's Kanban also, but create a card. Ideally, it's like a sticky note. Okay, so we take that new card, sticky note, Trello card, capture it in the new bucket, add whatever information that we have, but we don't want to spend a lot of time on it at this point unless it has higher priority than some existing work that we're working on, in which case we need to really bring the product owner or the leader who's asked our sales leader and reprioritize our work. But generally, let's just capture it, and then during our product backlog refinement meeting, we'll sort of get into the details of the work, decompose it into deliverables and weekly chunks of work, and then size it and plan it and triage it and all of that. Okay, so once we do that on our weekly product backlog, we break the work down. For us, anything over a 1 week sprint, because our sprints are 1 week long, then we tag it as an epic. And so most deals are multi-week long, so we make it an epic. But the problem is epics are so big, it's hard to sort of plan what I'm going to do this week and next week, etc. So what we do is we break the epic down into user stories. And user stories are like use cases of the past, but they're really sort of what's the work, what's the deliverable, visible deliverable. I like to call these minimum viable deliverable, MVD. It's a way of sort of focusing the team on producing something that is beneficial, provides value to the client, to the customer. Maybe it's a first version draft of a bill of materials, or maybe it's an architecture start, and you want to sketch something out, get it in front of the client, and say, hey, is this what you were asking for? And so we break that into a minimum viable deliverable, which is a user story. And now I like to, in Trello, link these back to the epic so I know sort of the progress of the epic. When we create the user story, and then we add the estimate, how long it's going to take, and the deliverable that we're going to produce, then we move it over to the groomed bucket. And so we do that, we break down all the work, break down existing work, existing epics, existing deals, etc., and keep splitting it out into week-long chunks or no longer than 1 week in effort. And then once we've broken down all the work into those high-level sort of weekly deliverables, then we have the team do planning poker, which is a technique in Agile to get everybody to size how much effort they think each deliverable will take. Okay, so we finish that. We break down all the work into user stories, size it, put the deliverable that we plan to produce. Like I said, it might be a first draft of a proposal or something of that nature. Obviously, sales folks will like, well, I can't do that. I got to go back and forth. I got to get pricing. That's true. The question is, what can you get done this week? That's what we're trying to focus in on. Maybe it's not the final version, but let's start with the first draft, version 1, right? Can that be done in the first week? Can you get the first pricing discount in the first week? If so, then together, that may be the user story. But if it's going to take multiple weeks, let's break up that work into multiple versions and multiple weeks, multiple sprints, so we can focus what we're going to work on and what we can control within the current sprint. Okay, so we end that meeting, and then on Monday mornings we start our sprint planning. Now, sprint planning is where we take the user stories that we've groomed, that we've sorted into the next sprint. So ideally, the groomed user stories, we may have 50 cards in here, maybe more than can be done in a given sprint. So we move over the most important work into the top of the next sprint. And I like to have twice the velocity. Velocity is simply the total amount of work that the team can get produced based off of the previous work by, aggregating the total story points or estimates of what they actually accomplished. So twice the velocity, because during the week maybe something gets blocked and they need to pull something else onto the sprint board. So that's why I like to have twice the velocity, the team's velocity in cards groomed and ready to go. That means they have the title, they have who needs it, what do they need, where are they, when do they need it, a deliverable, acceptance criteria, all those types of things, and it's been estimated by the team so that we can start planning it out. Okay, so on Monday, we pull in those cards into the sprint backlog. And these sound like the same thing, but they're different. The product backlog is all the work that we want to do, sort of the requirements. The sprint backlog is what are we doing this week, and only this week, or only this sprint. For us, a sprint is 1 week. And so Scrum says this can be up to 8 hours for a 1 month, 1 month sprint. So that actually breaks down into about 2 hours for a 1 week sprint. Which I like. That's enough time usually to sort of decompose the work into tasks. So we said up here, minimum viable deliverable. Maybe that is produce a first draft architecture, solution architecture. Well, how do we do that? Well, I need to go research the products that they want against the requirements that they shared. I need to look at the networking. I need to look at the security. So there might be 10 different steps that are really required to build that one deliverable. And so that's why we got to break out that user story, which is really sort of a deliverable, MVD, minimum viable deliverable that I'm trying to produce, and break out the tasks. And the tasks need to be less than 1 day in duration. If they're going to be 5 days in duration, then break it into 5 tasks. We don't need to get down to first I'm going to log in and then I'm going to enter the password and then I'm going to pull up Visio. That's a little too granular. That's inside of the task. The task really is one person doing a chunk of work that can be done in the day, right? Okay, so that's what we do. We split out the user stories into tasks, and then we've got this list of daily work that needs to be done, and then the sprint team, the Scrum team, will volunteer or pick up the top tasks that they can do. So, if Bob's got too much work on his deal and he needs help, and it's important for the team to meet, sales targets, then John can help Bob out by doing task 2, right? So John will pick up task 1, move it over to saying the doing queue list. He's working on it. And then John will pick up task 2 and move it over to the doing list. And so that continues till everybody has work that they're working on for that given day. Now, if they finish that task in the middle of the day, then they can go grab task 3, right? But the important thing is that they pick up the tasks in order of priority. They should be sorted by priority. We should finish user story 1 before we worry about user story 2 or enablement 3 or whatever it is. We focus on sort of the top stories first, and we get that all the way to complete before we worry about these others. Now, if we've got all the work that can be done on user story 1 and there's still idle people, then sure, pick up user story 2. But the key point is, everybody needs to focus on user story 1, get that complete. And so at the end of the sprint, we produce something, a minimum viable deliverable, that user story 1. If we run behind, we at least get that first story done. And if there's 5 stories, well, then we finish the first 4 before we finish the 5th. What we don't want is sort of 80% of 5 different tasks. So that's what often happens. And that's really what I like about Scrum, and sort of time boxing our schedule and making sure that we focus our energies on getting deliverables and results within the sprint. Okay. And then to be into the done queue, it needs to meet what's called the definition of done. And so the team figures out what that means. It may mean that it gets reviewed by legal. It may have a second, 4 eyes principle, where somebody else has reviewed it. It may be that your manager signed off. Whatever it is, capture those sort of list of to-dos or list of criteria that are required before you can claim that chunk of work, that deliverable, is ready to go to the client. Okay, so after that, we do the work. Then on Friday around lunchtime or so, we'll have a sprint review meeting. And in here, we demo what we produce. Now, in a development team, you can actually demo the code. In a sales team, you're not often building code, but you're still producing something, or you should be producing something. So, show the proposal, show the architecture, demo what you've actually produced that is ready to go to the client. Now, you might have done 3 versions in a week and you've had lots of dialogue back and forth with the client. Great, show version 3, right? Show the end result, because the iterations, or the increments in Scrum terminology, is the sum total of your new work to what's already there. So if it's version 15, then show version 15, and this is what we got done and how we're progressing the opportunity. And then if all of the user stories or the work that comprise that epic have been complete, then the epic comes over. And so that might be a deal. We close the deal, right? And then we track for management, we track the results and progress. Maybe we've got a quarterly target, and so we burn down some of that quarterly target. Maybe it's a $100 million target, and we do 10 million burned down in this this first week. And so now we'll show progress of 10 of 100. So anyway, we do that, and then we talk about what we produced, the progress of deals, and then what next. So if there's new critical deals or a change in direction, then we plan that out in our next sprint, right? So this agility, the ability to adapt every week, because every week we're starting fresh. This sprint backlog gets cleaned out, and we start fresh. If something didn't get done, like a user story 3, then we move it back to the product backlog, which is sort of the requirements list, and it gets reprioritized, retriaged with the existing work that's in the list. So that's really powerful. Each week we start fresh and we adapt to whatever new feedback we got, whatever new requirements come in, and they get prioritized against work that we had planned to do. We also do a daily scrum. This sort of keeps us on track. Now, sales folks are often out in the field, and so you can't really do like a daily stand-up call. But it's still important to sort of, what progress have you made? You can do it in Slack, Slack, hey, I moved this, and go physically move the card. Really what I like to do is a WebEx, and we walk through, everybody picks up their task and they share with the team. Everybody gets on, video conference, and you see that everybody's paying attention. It's only 15 minutes. Pick up your card, move it to doing, move your doing card to done. That lets anybody else know that if your task was in their dependency chain, so task 3 depends on task 1, then they can start task 3, right? So that's important to let them know, so that they can start. And then what are you going to do today? And you're sharing with the team what you plan to do this day. Ideally, all of these tasks are progressing this deliverable or this chunk of work that you hope to get done this week. So can do it virtually. It's easy to do virtually. Just pull up Trello, move the cards throughout the week, throughout every day, and don't do it. It's best to sort of do it live in front of everybody so you can collaborate and talk about what you're doing. And then, like I said, then we do a sprint review at the end. Okay, so at the end of the sprint review, it's always good to have a 30-minute or so call and what's called a sprint retrospective. Effectively, just sort of get brainstorming from the team. You can actually get everybody, if you're physically in the same place, get sticky notes, and people can write a few ideas of what went well, what went bad, and then ultimately leave with what are the action items to make the process better. So in Trello, you could just have a retrospective board or a queue for retrospective, and everybody creates a card of, one good thing, one bad thing, start clustering those cards together, see if there's patterns, and then the team agrees to, add a new card over here in the product backlog of, we're going to make sure we all WebEx at the same time, or we're all going to get off of our phone, right? Maybe that makes, we didn't get enough collaboration. It's really hard to do 15-minute Scrum because we're all distracted by emails and Slacks and all these other things. So now maybe the improvement is, okay, we're going to turn on our webcam so we can see each other, because the team is accountable to each other, not accountable just to the leader. It's to the whole team is accountable to pay attention and help the team sort of progress the opportunities and move things forward. Okay, and so then you just do this over and over. There's no gap between the end of a sprint and the next sprint. The next sprint starts, Friday after the close of this. And you continue and continue the process. So I really like that. So I hope that helps. And afterwards, I'll create another video that actually walks through the Trello board. Okay, thanks for watching.